There are some key players who are sitting in sportsbooks looking very good for these Thanksgiving Day matchups. But first off, happy Thanksgiving. This is the Thanksgiving edition of the Boys on the Bench, where we will be discussing the best player props to be taking in these Week 12 NFL matchups on Thanksgiving Day. But before we jump into this, make sure y'all are following your host on Twitter. I am DJ, and alongside me is my brother Dalton. We do have Twitter accounts, DJ_BOTB for Boys on the Bench, and Dalton's is just the same. Dalton_BOTB for Boys on the Bench. Now, the last thing that I did want to mention is that we also have a Discord channel as well. In that Discord channel, we are posting daily bets in there, betting on all your favorite sports. I myself, and I'm on a little bit of a heater, hitting 6 out of my last 8 NBA props. So make sure you're joining that while the bets are still free. Let's go ahead and jump in.
So in this first Thanksgiving Day matchup, we have the Detroit Lions taking on the Green Bay Packers. So guys, in this first player prop bet, I have Jahmyr Gibbs running for over 46.5 rush yards versus the Green Bay Packers. Last time he played Green Bay, it was back in week 4, and he had 8 rushes for 40 yards, which was 5 yards per carry. I think Gibbs has grown tremendously as a runner and has increased his yardage and his usage week after week. Despite having David Montgomery back in the fold, Gibbs' 5 yards per carry has been consistent all year. So with his increased workload, I'm expecting him to tote the ball 10 plus times, giving him a floor of at least 50 yards rushing if he's still doing his 5 yards per carry. And that's going to be versus Green Bay this week, which is going to help me win this bet. As for my next player prop bet, I have Jamison Williams also in this game, going for over 1.5 receptions. It absolutely bugs me how Jamison Williams doesn't match what I believe is his deserved usage. Outside of Amon-Ra St. Brown and maybe Sam Laporta, I don't see any other receiver that's really competing for any targets. So Williams has been averaging 3 to 4 targets per game, and with those targets, he has mustered out 2 receptions over the past 3 weeks. Jair Alexander is now back from IR for the Green Bay Packers, and so I'm expecting him to shadow Amon-Ra St. Brown, which should hopefully force Goff to look early and often towards Jamison Williams this game. So I feel that this is a safe bet for me, considering that his floor has been 2 receptions over the past few weeks. And I can see him easily getting 2 receptions at least, but it sure would be nice to see him have a massive game from number 9 in this matchup on Turkey Day.
I also really like Jordan Love. 225 passing yards. This is an alternate line for him, and I really like this at the current line that it's at. He has hit this in 8 out of his last 11 starts this season, and in their last matchup, the Detroit Lions and Green Bay did face off in week 4, and we did see Jordan Love go for 246, which would have hit this 225. Now, where I really start to digging in a little bit more into it, Aaron Jones, he's listed as doubtful for this. So I think that this is going to be another game where we're seeing Jordan Love throwing 40 plus times in a game. So he's thrown 40 plus attempts in 3 out of his last 4 games. So again, now that Aaron Jones is out, I think they're going to have to rely a little bit more on Jordan Love's arm. And since the bye week, honestly, Detroit has not looked good. They had their bye week 3 weeks ago. These last 2 weeks that Detroit's played on the defensive side of the ball, they've allowed 32 points per game. So they're allowing teams to sit there and compete with them. We know how explosive Detroit has been. It's kind of weird saying that, but we've seen how explosive Detroit has been. But now the thing that's different is they're letting teams compete. And if you're a Green Bay fan, just like myself, you know that Green Bay is going to do that. They're going to sit there and compete. All their games that they play in are very close. So because of that, I do like Love, especially with the last 2 weeks that he's shown, where he's averaging 305 plus passing yards per game. So I think that this line here at 225 is sitting very well for him. So I will take this 100% of the time this week. Next game that we have on our list is the Washington Commanders at the Dallas Cowboys. And the first line that I really like here is CeeDee Lamb 7 plus receptions. This is another alternate line play here, but it's very good odds as well. CeeDee Lamb is a superstar. He is probably he is the top receiving option for these Dallas Cowboys. But outside of Jalen Ferguson and CeeDee Lamb, really there's not a whole lot of to be passed around. Dak Prescott doesn't use Brandon Cooks, Michael Gallup, Tony Pollard a whole lot in the passing game. And if they do, it's highly inconsistent. So because of that, Washington ranks bottom in the league versus wide receivers, 28th in pass or bottom 20s in passing yards and receiving yards to the wide receiver position. And like I said, CeeDee Lamb commands a 27% targets percentage for Dallas. So really like him in this matchup to get 7+ receptions, especially with recent history and how he's performed in these last couple of weeks. The next one that I have here is Brian Robinson, over 41.5 rush yards. I know that Dallas has a very good rush defense, but Brian Robinson, with the absence of Antonio Gibson, we saw this last week, what it would look like in outside of a running back by committee approach. And we saw, again, he has hit this line in 3 out of his last 4 games. But with Gibson out, we saw him log his highest snap percentage since week 2. He had 76%. All the way back to week 2, it was 73%. Everything else under that, I mean, it was under 60%. So it was nice to see him being back as kind of the bell cow of that group. So I think having them there at 41.5 is actually very low, considering that since their bye week 4 weeks ago, Dallas has allowed this line to hit every single week. So I love this play for him. The only week that Brian Robinson didn't hit it in each of his last 4 weeks, we also saw him go for 119 receiving yards. So really love this play here for Brian Robinson and CeeDee Lamb.
And so for our next matchup, guys, we currently have the 49ers taking on the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle. So, guys, for this player prop, obviously this one's going to be a favorite, but it's going to be Christian McCaffrey being an anytime scorer in this game. Guys, Christian McCaffrey is leading the NFL in touchdowns this year with 9 on the ground and 5 through the air in 11 games this season. Absolutely unreal. He is obviously, like I said, a betting favorite to be a scorer every week because he just has a knack for finding the pay dirt. And especially in favorable matchups. And that's especially going to be the case versus the Seahawks this week. The Seahawks defense is currently tied 5th in the league in touchdowns allowed to opposing backs. And also, let's not forget why I really like this too, is that Geno Smith is currently dealing with an elbow injury. He has some soreness, and this D-line is just filthy good in San Fran. So this should be a positive game script for CMC to boot, and they're just going to get the ball early and often. Brock Purdy's looking good too with his arm. He still doesn't throw anything north of 30 times per game. So they're going to rely very heavily on CMC. And so this should be a very easy bet to follow on this prop bet. So I'm loving it.
Another bet that I like here is on the opposite side of the ball, and it's DK Metcalf over 64.5 receiving yards. If we look over his last 5 games, he has hit this line in 4. So I really like this matchup, though, and I think that he's going to only add to this tally a little bit more because San Francisco, they're not very good against wide receivers. And the only reason that you can really say that is because in most games, they're actually leading, which forces teams to pass a lot. I can see that very well being the case versus this Seattle Seahawks team, but San Francisco does rank 28th in targets to wide receivers and 22nd in receiving yards. So with DK Metcalf kind of being on this recent trend that he's been going on, starting to look a little bit more like himself, he now commands a 24.2% target share for the Seattle Seahawks. So I really like him here hitting this 64.5. San Francisco is not a good team versus these wide receivers. And if you look, in fact, in those last 5 games that I was talking about, they've allowed 100+ yards to go to wide receiver ones in 4 out of those games. Amari Cooper, Jordan Addison, Jamar Chase, and Christian Kirk. So I think that DK Metcalf is going to get added to that list. 64.5 is very low for me. I feel like you can almost take an alternate line and get that boosted up a little bit. 80 is about where I feel comfortable taking him. So I think this 64.5 receiving yards is a very good spot for him to be at.
All right, guys, so that's all we have for this episode. We hope you guys liked it. And, guys, if you want to continue to tune in, if you like what you heard, if you didn't like what you heard, comment. But, guys, don't forget to comment. Guys, go ahead and like and smash the subscribe button. Hit that little bell icon. Get notified when we post our content because, guys, it's coming weekly and it's coming more and more sooner and later. Guys, we're posting content almost to the point where it's every other day. So, guys, if you want to get more involved, if you want to get content every day, guys, go ahead and tune into our Discord. Like DJ said, we're getting the NBA season's upon us. Guys, we're getting into the NBA season. We're getting more and more there. Eventually, you got Nathan. If you followed along, he's getting into NASCAR. So, guys, we've got something for all of you. So, guys, the football season is getting more and more exciting. We're getting into the postseason. So, guys, please join the Discord. Join the podcast, guys. We're growing. Catch this wave while it's hot. So, guys, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you soon.
Ride the pine.